Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Dan Bancaro Shorts. I'm your host, Dan Bancaro. Hope you all are having a fantastic end of September. So last time we were here, we were talking a lot about acceptance and how we should apply that in everyday life. And for me, I remember there was a time in my life where I didn't want to make any efforts to achieve. I wanted everything handed to me, or I wanted everything done the easy way, or I felt very entitled just by my good looks and my charm. But I found out very quickly that it didn't work that way. And I found myself in a state of envy or sometimes even jealousy of others. And after a lot of intense work and speculation and help of a few good people, I've been able to conquer those feelings and be in a state of gratitude more times than not, and not have to experience those things anymore. So envy, there's a big difference between envy and jealousy. Envy is, a feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, luck, maybe a relationship that they have, and jealousy is a feeling of unhappiness or anger at that person directly because they have something or someone that they want. So sometimes people have certain advantages or they have different achievements, and others are really, really jealous and spiteful towards these people rather than just being envious and saying, oh man, I really wish I did those things or had those things or was in that type of a situation that person is. So we talk about things that we do to get in these states of gratitude or what have you. And what I know is that when I feel like I'm lacking something in my life, I know that I'm not in a state of appreciation for what I currently have or the people in my life or the circumstances that I've gotten through. And I always got to go back and remember these things. So sometimes people who are in states of envy or jealousy have what they call Schadenfreude. Now, Schadenfreude is a concept where we're talking about pleasure derived by someone because of another person's misfortune. So what happens is like maybe somebody's riding high for a few things or for a few months or years and life's going pretty well. They might even be a very humble person and keep it to themselves, but envy or jealous people thrive on watching them fail or fall. And I've seen this happen many times. We see it in the media, we see it in sports. We might see it in the workplace, in our relationships. I'm sure there's some students here that can, say that they've seen this in school. So we want to stay away from Schadenfreude. It's a very funny spelled word. Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude. So we got to stay out of Schadenfreude, jealousy, and envy. Now, how do we do that? Well, with envy, I always like to have some admiration or show some generosity or kindness towards that person or maybe just somebody else. Perhaps get into a state of gratitude for what you do have or what you do get to experience. When it comes to, jealousy, sometimes we need to give credit where credit is due or recognize somebody for what their accomplishments are. Have some admiration rather than having so much admiration for what they have, but resenting the people. It's just not right. So for me, I had to get really serious about myself and ask myself, what am I not doing that these people are doing for me to feel this way? There's a big difference between determination and willingness. Determination is great, but if you don't have willingness to do certain things to achieve what others have or experience what others are experiencing, then we don't reserve the right. It's one thing if we make a gallant effort and we're disappointed because we've done similar things or worked just as hard as others, but don't get the same results. That's okay to be disappointed, but sometimes envy will creep in, but jealousy is never right. It's very, very ugly. So in the Dharma world, I'm told that there's a specific term that captures the positive emotion of being happy for another person's good fortune. That is called mudita. Mudita is a Sanskrit and a Pali term for referring to the concept of selfless joy in the happiness of others, or sympathetic joy. It's a feeling of delight when good things happen to other people. And the word and its concept come from the Dharmic traditions and inspire a philosophy of intentional, mindful living. So, a little breakdown of the concept. It's the meaning of selfish joy and delight in others' good fortune and sympathetic joy. Originated from Sanskrit and Pali languages of ancient India. The purpose is, its core concept in the tradition is encouraging practitioners to cultivate positive emotions for others' well-being. Now, how do we cultivate these things? Well, again, sometimes we got to pray and meditate on certain concepts to wish well-being for others, especially people who have harmed us in the past. Or maybe they're not the nicest or kindest people, or maybe they're not generous. Maybe they don't have good composure. They don't express themselves very well, and they cause problems in their relationships. So, an example, I was told, is like the joy a parent feels for a child's accomplishments. An example of mudita. And I know I feel this whenever I watch my daughter Stella dance or sing or perform different character roles in different plays and musicals, or when I see her giving dance instructions and coaching to younger children. I'm experiencing mudita. In philosophy, it's a value that can inspire businesses to build products with a focus on well-being, like the actual company named Mudita, which creates minimalist phones and other tools for a calmer experience. In a mindset, Mudita encourages a shift from focusing solely on one's own happiness to finding fulfillment in the happiness of others. And I can definitely relate to this in the recovery movement. So, as a sponsor, as a member of different 12-step groups, and as a member of the Knights of Columbus, we put together charity events for fundraisers for scholarships for Catholic children, and we also volunteer our time for different things in the community. I can experience mudita in a mindset and enjoy the happiness of others. But what am I doing to create these things in mudita and avoid envy, avoid getting into a state of jealousy? A few years ago, Ice Cube and Too Short came out with a song called Ain't Got No Haters. Now, for those of you who aren't hip to the pop culture, we hear things like player hater or just haters in the world today. And usually it's a term used towards people who have envy or jealousy towards others for something they've done or experienced. So if somebody is saying to you that you ain't got no haters, it's a sarcastic and nice way of saying that you don't do shit, nobody wants what you want, and that's why you ain't got no haters. So, as funny as that seems, it's actually a harsh truth. Some people who go out and succeed and do well are going to have those who criticize them more or show the envy or the jealousy. Whereas people who have a mediocre life and kind of keep to themselves, and maybe they're just humble and they don't have a lot of needs or wants or desires or material possessions, they're not going to have a lot of haters or a lot of envy or jealousy. So, I don't know, maybe that's the way to go. I mean, you look at some of the people we admire, like Jesus or Gandhi or Lao Tzu, St. Francis, Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama. These were people who don't necessarily have a lot of things or aren't very flashy or whatever, but we admire them for their belief system and their ideas. So, why are we not mimicking or being a copycat of the behaviors of those who are successful or of those who have things that we want? I see people take advice from people about diet and exercise, and they succeed. Others, they aren't willing to diet or exercise in those certain ways, and then they get upset when they don't have the physique of others, and they play or hate on them, and they express their envy or their jealousy for that person. Sometimes it might be a career. We're not willing to go out and get the right training or get the right certifications or make sacrifices and go to school and work part-time and take a short-term economic loss for a greater gain down the road. So there's all these circumstances going on, and there's all this envy and jealousy going around, and we hear it subtly and very profoundly in everyday language, whether it's on social media or on the television set. So, like I said earlier, many times in my early 20s and my 30s, I saw my friends and family members growing, learning, succeeding, and making sacrifices and making different efforts to achieve, acquire, or experience, things I wasn't willing to do. I mean, these could be certifications, training, degrees, careers. We can even talk about the physical accomplishments like we talked about earlier. We could also address those who struggle to stay abstinent from substances. Many times I had to look at what I was failing to be willing in order to have a career. In particular, maybe my physical condition, or maybe being a homeowner or a college graduate. Even acquiring some type of recreational skill. So if I'm really honest with myself about my efforts, I can remove any envy or jealousy I have towards any other person. And so can you. I had to start giving credit where credit was due and start making things happen for myself. So today, I want everybody to think about mudita, selfish joy and delight in others' good fortune, or sympathetic joy. I want you to think about if you're in a state of schadenfreude, where you're happy when you see others fail or fall apart, whether they're succeeding at one point or not. I want you to ask yourself if you're feeling envy for somebody for something that they have, or if you're jealous at that person and really actually angry about the fact that they have something that you have. And this doesn't have to be anything current. Maybe it's something in your past. Remember, this show is just for us to reflect and think about things. So anyway, try to practice gratitude. Try to practice admiration. Give credit where credit's due. Look up mudita, M-U-D-I-T-A. Practice mudita in everyday life. And I want to thank you for joining Dan Bancaro Shorts once again. I'm Dan Bancaro, and we'll see you next time.